I'd been sitting in that courthouse hallway for 20 minutes, watching my wife's attorney whisper and laugh with her paralegal. Every few seconds, they'd glance my way, and I'd catch that smirk. The kind that says they've already won before the hearing even started. I looked down at my uniform. Navy blue work shirt with St. Michael's Hospital, Environmental Services embroidered on the pocket. The fabric was worn at the elbows, a small bleach stain near the hem that wouldn't come out no matter how many times I'd washed it. My work boots were scuffed, the kind you can pick up at Walmart for $39. I'd worn this same outfit to clean operating rooms just yesterday morning. My wife, Patricia, sat 15 feet away in a charcoal gray Armani suit I'd never seen before. Her shoes probably cost more than I made in a week. At least, that's what she wanted everyone to think. The bailiff called us in. Judge Morrison's courtroom was exactly what you'd expect in a family court building that had seen better days. Wood paneling from the 70s, fluorescent lights that hummed too loud, and that particular smell of old paper and floor wax. I'd mopped these exact floors 6 months ago. The judge didn't know that, of course. "All rise," the bailiff announced. We stood, and Judge Morrison entered. A woman in her late 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. "Please be seated," she said, settling into her chair and opening the case file. "We're here for the matter of Thompson versus Thompson, custody and division of assets. I've reviewed the preliminary motions. Mrs. Thompson, your attorney filed for primary custody and requested Mr. Thompson's visitation be limited to supervised visits only. That's a serious request. Mr. Jacobson, please proceed with your argument." Patricia's attorney stood up. Daniel Jacobson was exactly the type you'd expect her to hire. Mid-40s, expensive suit, hair that looked professionally styled, and a Rolex that caught the light every time he gestured. I'd done my research on him. $250 an hour, minimum. The retainer alone was probably $20,000. "Thank you, Your Honor," Jacobson said smoothly. "My client's position is straightforward. She is a senior nursing administrator at St. Michael's Hospital, earning $230,000 annually. She has provided stability for their 2 children throughout this marriage while Mr. Thompson has." He paused, glancing at his notes with what looked like genuine pity, struggled to maintain consistent employment. I kept my face neutral. Patricia wouldn't look at me. "Your Honor," Jacobson continued, "Mr. Thompson currently works as a hospital janitor, earning approximately $29,000 per year. While we respect all honest labor, the reality is that he cannot provide the same standard of living my client can offer. The children, Emma, age 14, and Michael, age 11, are accustomed to private school, music lessons, travel. Mr. Thompson lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that frankly concerns us from a safety standpoint." He let that hang in the air. I watched the judge's face. She was listening, taking notes, giving nothing away. "Furthermore," Jacobson said, and now his voice took on a more serious tone, "we have concerns about Mr. Thompson's judgment and stability. He's been fired from 3 jobs in the past 5 years. He's had periods of unexplained absence from the children's lives, including missing Emma's 8th grade graduation last month and Michael's championship baseball game. My client has documented 37 instances in the past year where Mr. Thompson failed to show up for scheduled visits or called at the last minute to cancel. That one stung because it was true. I had missed those events. I'd had to, but I couldn't explain why. Not yet. We're asking for primary physical custody with Mr. Thompson's visitation limited to every other weekend, supervised until we can establish a pattern of reliability. Given the significant income disparity, we're also requesting that he be held responsible for only 15% of the children's expenses, which my client will generously cover." Jacobson sat down, and I could feel Patricia's satisfaction from across the room. She still wouldn't look at me. Judge Morrison turned to me. "Mr. Thompson, I see you're representing yourself today. Did you want to retain an attorney?" "I can continue this hearing if you need more time." I stood up slowly. My knees ached a little. 62 years old and spent a lot of hours on my feet. No, Your Honor, I'm ready to proceed. Very well. Do you have any response to Mr. Jacobson's characterization of your financial situation and employment history? This was it. The moment I'd been working toward for 18 months. I reached into my bag, pulled out a folder, and took a breath. Your Honor, I'd like to correct a few inaccuracies for the record. First, I need to provide my full legal name and current occupation. Patricia's attorney looked confused. The judge raised an eyebrow. Your name is James Thompson, is it not? Yes, ma'am. James Raymond Thompson. But what Mr. Jacobson doesn't know is that I'm also Senior Special Agent Thompson with the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Inspector General, Criminal Investigations Division. I've been working undercover for the past 18 months, investigating healthcare fraud at St. Michael's Hospital. The room went completely silent. I watched Patricia's face drain of color. Her hand went to her throat, and she turned to Jacobson, grabbing his sleeve. He looked as shocked as she did. Judge Morrison leaned forward. I'm sorry, you're a federal agent? I reached into my jacket and pulled out my credentials, walking them up to the bench. The judge examined them carefully, then looked at me with completely different eyes. Your Honor, I took the position as a janitor at St. Michael's as part of an undercover operation. My actual salary is $137,000 annually. Plus, I receive an additional $25,000 in federal law enforcement benefits. The one-bedroom apartment Mr. Jacobson mentioned is a temporary cover residence. My actual home is a 4-bedroom house in Riverside that's paid off. I've maintained a separate residence during this investigation for operational security. Patricia was whispering frantically to Jacobson now. He was shaking his head, frantically flipping through papers. The reason I missed Emma's graduation and Michael's baseball game, along with many other events, was because I was conducting surveillance operations and couldn't break cover. I have documented every missed visit, and I can provide sealed testimony explaining each absence to the court if necessary, though some details remain classified pending the conclusion of the criminal case. Judge Morrison set down her pen. Mr. Thompson, this is highly unusual. You're telling me you've been working undercover at the same hospital where your wife is employed? Yes, Your Honor, that's correct. Did she know about this? No, ma'am. No one knew except my direct supervisors at OIG and the FBI task force I've been working with. The investigation required complete operational security. Jacobson stood up, his face red. Your Honor, this is completely inappropriate. If this is true, why wasn't opposing counsel notified? Why wasn't this disclosed during discovery? Because, Your Honor, I said calmly, the investigation involves Mrs. Thompson directly. Patricia made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. Jacobson grabbed her arm as she started to stand, pulling her back down into her chair. Judge Morrison's expression was unreadable. Mr. Thompson, you're making a serious allegation. Do you have evidence to present to this court? Yes, ma'am. I pulled out a second folder from my bag, this one much thicker. Your Honor, over the past 18 months, I've gathered evidence that Mrs. Thompson, along with Dr. Richard Castellano, Chief of Surgery at St. Michael's, have been engaged in a massive healthcare fraud scheme involving falsified billing records, unnecessary surgical procedures, and kickbacks from medical device companies. The estimated fraud totals approximately $4.7 million in false claims to Medicare and Medicaid. Patricia stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's a lie! James, what are you doing? Your Honor, he's making this up. He's been unstable. Mrs. Thompson, please sit down, Judge Morrison said firmly. Mr. Jacobson, control your client. Jacobson pulled Patricia back into her seat. She was shaking now, her perfect composure crumbling. I felt a pang of something, not quite sympathy, but close. We'd been married for 16 years. I remembered when she was different. When she actually cared about patients more than profit margins. Your Honor, I continued, I have copies of falsified medical records, billing statements, email correspondence between Mrs. Thompson and Dr. Castellano discussing patient selections for unnecessary procedures, and recorded conversations regarding the distribution of kickback payments. I've also documented their personal relationship, which began approximately 3 years ago. Judge Morrison looked at Patricia's attorney. Mr. Jacobson, did you know about any of this? No, Your Honor. I certainly did not. He looked genuinely shaken, and I almost felt bad for him. Almost. He'd spent the last 20 minutes trying to paint me as an incompetent father and deadbeat, but he was just doing his job with the information he had. Your Honor, I said, I'm not presenting this evidence to be vindictive. I'm presenting it because Mr. Jacobson's entire argument about custody is based on Mrs. Thompson's income and position, both of which are the direct result of criminal activity. She will be arrested today. There's a federal warrant that's currently sealed, waiting for this hearing to conclude. Patricia was crying now, mascara running down her face. James, please, think about Emma and Michael, please. That was the first time she'd looked at me all morning, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not the cold, calculating woman who'd been sleeping with her colleague while planning to take me for everything in the divorce. I saw the woman I'd married, the nurse who used to come home exhausted but happy, who'd hold her patients' hands during scary procedures. I did think about Emma and Michael, I said quietly. Every single day. That's why I couldn't let this continue. Judge Morrison cleared her throat. Mr. Thompson, you said there's a federal warrant? Yes, Your Honor. I've been instructed to call the U.S. Marshals Service once these proceedings were complete. There are agents waiting outside the courthouse. Your Honor, I need to consult with my client, Jacobson said. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. I request a brief recess. Denied, Judge Morrison said. Mr. Thompson, call your colleagues. Let's resolve this now. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I'd been given. This is Agent Thompson. We're ready. Courtroom 3B. I hung up and looked at the judge. They'll be here in 2 minutes. Patricia was sobbing openly now. James, I can explain. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Richard said it was just a few extra procedures, that we were helping patients get care they wouldn't otherwise receive. It just got out of control. Patricia, stop talking, Jacobson hissed. Don't say another word. But she wasn't listening to him. She was looking at me, and I could see she was terrified. Not of prison, though that was part of it. She was terrified that her children would know what she'd done. The kids, she whispered. James, what about the kids? The courtroom door opened, and 2 U.S. Marshals walked in, followed by an FBI agent I recognized, Agent Martinez. He nodded at me. Your Honor, Martinez said, approaching the bench and presenting his credentials. We have a federal warrant for Patricia Ann Thompson's arrest on charges of healthcare fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and money laundering. Judge Morrison examined the warrant. Patricia stood on shaking legs as the marshal approached her. Patricia Thompson, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. I watched as they cuffed her. She was still crying, but quietly now. As they led her past me toward the door, she stopped. Did you ever love me? She asked. Or was I just a case to you? I thought about that question, about the woman I'd married, about the late nights when she'd come home and tell me about saving a patient's life, about Emma's first steps and Michael's first words, about the moment 3 years ago when I'd noticed the new jewelry, the expensive dinners she claimed were work functions, the distance between us that I couldn't explain. I loved you, I said. I loved the woman you were. I don't know who you became. She nodded slightly, and then the marshals let her out. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of the door closing. Judge Morrison sat back in her chair, removing her glasses and rubbing her eyes. Mr. Thompson, she said finally. I've been on the bench for 19 years. I have never seen anything quite like this. I'm going to continue this custody matter for 2 weeks to allow everyone to process what just happened. In the interim, I'm granting you temporary full custody of Emma and Michael. Mr. Jacobson, I assume you'll be withdrawing from this case? Yes, Your Honor, he said quietly. He was already packing up his briefcase. He looked at me once, shook his head, and left without another word. "Mr. Thompson, I have one question for you," Judge Morrison said. "Why did you file for divorce when you did? Why not wait until after the criminal case concluded?" "Because, Your Honor, Patricia filed first. 3 months ago, right after I refused to sign paperwork she'd brought home about refinancing our house. She didn't know I'd already discovered that the refinance was actually a way to hide liquid assets before the federal seizure. When she filed for divorce and full custody, I knew I had to accelerate my timeline. I couldn't let my children be used as leverage in a criminal case, and I couldn't let her drain marital assets that would need to be recovered for restitution to the victims." The judge nodded slowly. "The victims. How many people were harmed by this fraud scheme?" "Based on our investigation, approximately 237 patients received unnecessary surgical procedures over a 3-year period. Another 415 patients had their medical records falsified to justify billing for procedures that were either unnecessary or never performed. The monetary fraud is $4.7 million, but the human cost is much higher. At least 12 patients suffered serious complications from surgeries they didn't need. 3 died." Judge Morrison's face hardened. "I see. Mr. Thompson, I'm going to order a guardian ad litem for your children to help them process this situation. They're going to need support. I've already arranged for them to speak with a therapist who specializes in family trauma, Your Honor. Dr. Sarah Chen at the Family Counseling Center. She's been briefed on the general situation and is ready to see them whenever needed." "Good." She made a note. "We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. I expect you to have disclosed your actual financial situation by then, and we'll work out a permanent custody arrangement. Given the circumstances, I anticipate that won't be contentious. This hearing is adjourned." I gathered my things and walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. Agent Martinez was waiting by his car. "That went smoothly," he said. "Tired," I admitted. "I need to pick up my kids from school and figure out how to tell them their mother is in federal custody. We can provide support for that. Resources, counseling, whatever they need. Thanks, Martinez. I appreciate it." He nodded and headed to his car. The first was to Emma's school. I explained there was a family emergency and I needed to pick both kids up early. The secretary knew my voice. I'd called plenty of times over the years for parent-teacher conferences and sick days. She didn't ask questions. The second call was harder. I dialed my brother, Robert. "Hey, Jimmy," he answered. "How'd it go?" "She's in custody. I've got temporary full custody of the kids." He let out a long breath. "Jesus. How are you holding up?" "I don't know yet. I need to tell Emma and Michael. Rob, how do I tell them their mother is going to prison?" "The same way you tell them anything hard. Honestly, with love, and with faith that they're strong enough to handle it. They're good kids, Jimmy. You raised them right." "We both did. That's what makes this so hard. She was a good mother for a long time." "I know, brother, I know. Listen, Karen and I are here if you need us. The kids can stay with us for a few days if you need space to sort things out." "Thanks, Rob. I'll let you know." I hung up and drove to Emma's middle school first. She came out looking confused, her backpack slung over one shoulder. "Dad, what are you doing here, and why are you wearing your work clothes?" "Get in, sweetheart. We need to pick up Michael, and then we need to talk." She studied my face, and I watched her expression change. Emma was smart. Too smart sometimes. "It's about Mom, isn't it?" "Yes, it's about Mom. But it's complicated, Em. Just trust me for a little bit longer." We drove to Michael's elementary school in silence. My son bounded out of his classroom with his usual energy, oblivious to the weight of what was coming. "Dad, you're here. Can we get ice cream?" Tommy's dad took him for ice cream yesterday and he said it was awesome and, "Michael, buddy, we need to go home first. We need to have a family meeting." His enthusiasm dimmed a little. "Is everything okay?" I glanced at Emma in the rearview mirror. She was biting her lip, worried. "We'll talk at home, okay?" My real house, not the cover apartment, was in a quiet neighborhood with oak trees lining the street. I'd bought it 8 years ago, back when Patricia's salary was legitimate and our marriage was still good. The lawn needed mowing. I'd been too busy with the investigation to keep up with it properly. We went inside, and I told them to sit on the couch. I pulled up the coffee table and sat across from them, still in my hospital uniform. For a moment, I didn't know where to start. Kids, I need to tell you something important, and it's going to be hard to hear. Your mom was arrested today. Michael's eyes went wide. Arrested? Like, with handcuffs? Like on TV? Yes, Buddy. With handcuffs. Emma was very still. What did she do? I'd thought a lot about this moment, about how much to tell them, how to balance protecting them with being honest. They deserved the truth, but they also deserved their childhood. Your mom made some very bad choices at her job. She was involved in something called healthcare fraud, which means she was billing insurance companies for medical procedures that patients didn't really need, or sometimes didn't even receive. She did this with a doctor at the hospital, and they took a lot of money that didn't belong to them. Dr. Castellano, Emma said quietly. The surgeon. Mom talked about him a lot. I nodded. Yes, Dr. Castellano. But you clean the hospital, Michael said, confused. How do you know about what Mom and the doctor were doing? Because I don't actually clean the hospital, Michael. That was my job as a cover story. I'm really a federal agent who investigates healthcare fraud. I was working undercover, which means I was pretending to be a janitor so I could gather evidence about what your mom and Dr. Castellano were doing. Emma's face changed, cycling through emotions too fast to track. Confusion, betrayal, understanding, and something else I couldn't quite name. You lied to us, she said, her voice small. For how long? 18 months. And yes, I lied. I hated lying to you, Emma. Every single day. But I had to, both to protect the investigation and to protect you. If your mom had known what I was really doing, things could have gotten dangerous. Is that why you missed my graduation? Emma asked. And all those other times you said you had to work? Yes, I was conducting surveillance, meeting with other agents, building the case. Michael was crying now, quiet tears running down his face. Is Mom going to jail? Yes, Buddy. She is, for a while. How long? I didn't know the answer to that. The sentencing guidelines for healthcare fraud could mean anywhere from 5 to 15 years, depending on a lot of factors. But I couldn't tell my 11-year-old son that his mother might be gone until he was in his 20s. I don't know yet. That will be up to a judge. But it's going to be a long time. Emma stood up abruptly. I need to be alone. Wait. No, Dad, I need to process this. I need to think. She ran upstairs, and I heard her bedroom door close. Not slam. Just close. Somehow that was worse. Michael climbed into my lap, even though he was really too big for it now. He wrapped his arms around my neck and cried. I held him, rubbing his back, feeling the weight of every choice I'd made settle on my shoulders. Is Mom a bad person? He asked into my shoulder. No, Buddy. She's not a bad person. She's a person who made bad choices. There's a difference. Will she still love us? Yes. Absolutely yes. Your mom loves you more than anything in the world. She made terrible mistakes, but they weren't about you. They were never about you. We sat like that for a long time. Eventually, Michael cried himself out and fell asleep against my chest. I carried him upstairs to his room, tucked him in, and then stood outside Emma's door. I knocked softly. Em? Can I come in? I guess. She was sitting on her bed, hugging her knees to her chest. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying anymore. She looked older than 14. Too old. I'm angry at you, she said. For lying. For making me think you were just a janitor who couldn't afford things and didn't care enough to show up. I know, you have every right to be angry. But I'm also... She trailed off, looking for the words. I'm proud of you? Is that weird? You were catching bad guys. You were protecting people. Mom and that doctor, they hurt people, didn't they? Yes, they hurt a lot of people. So you stopped them. You're like a real hero, Dad, not the pretend kind in movies. I sat down on the edge of her bed. I don't feel much like a hero right now. I feel like a father who had to arrest his children's mother. I feel like a husband who failed to notice when his wife lost her way. I feel like I made 1,000 small choices that all led us here. Did you have another choice? Could you have not done the investigation? I thought about that. I could have. When I first discovered what was happening, I could have walked away. Let someone else handle it. But I saw the patients. I saw the people your mom and Dr. Castellano hurt. There was an elderly woman, Mrs. Patterson, who had an unnecessary surgery that left her with permanent nerve damage. She can't hold her granddaughter anymore because her hands shake too badly. I couldn't walk away from that. Emma nodded slowly. Mrs. Patterson came to the hospital fundraiser last year. She was really nice. She gave Mom a donation even though she probably couldn't afford it. I know. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Emma asked the question I'd been dreading. Can we visit Mom? In jail? Eventually, yes. But not right away. She's going to be in federal custody for a while during the trial. Once things settle, we'll figure out visitation. If you want to. I don't know if I want to, but I think maybe I should. She's still my mom. She is. And nothing will ever change that. Emma leaned against me, and I put my arm around her. We sat like that while the afternoon faded into evening, not talking, just being together. Two people trying to figure out how to move forward when everything had fallen apart. Over the next few days, the story hit the news. Senior hospital administrator arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Patricia's lawyer negotiated a plea deal. She would testify against Dr. Castellano in exchange for a reduced sentence. 8 years instead of 15. The kids and I settled into a new routine. I took a leave of absence from work to be home with them. We went to therapy together and separately. Michael had nightmares for a while. Emma became very quiet, retreating into her books. The divorce proceedings became a formality. Patricia signed over custody and agreed to minimal visitation rights. Her attorney had withdrawn, and the public defender assigned to her criminal case advised her not to contest anything in family court. 3 months after Patricia's arrest, the kids and I were eating dinner when Emma asked, "Dad, did you love Mom when you arrested her?" I set down my fork. Yes, I did. Love doesn't just disappear because someone does something wrong. I was angry and disappointed and hurt, but I still loved the person she used to be. The person she might still be underneath all the bad choices. Do you think she'll get better? In prison? I hope so, Em, I really do. Not for me, but for you and Michael. Michael pushed his peas around his plate. Tommy, at school, said his mom read in the newspaper that you're going to get a lot of money for catching Mom. Is that true? I'd been wondering when this would come up. There's something called a whistleblower reward. When you report fraud against the government and it leads to a recovery, you can receive a percentage of what's recovered. In this case, yes, I'll receive something. Probably somewhere between 15 and 25% of the $4.7 million. That's like $1 million, Emma said, doing the math quickly. Roughly, yes. Are we rich now? Michael asked. No, buddy, we're comfortable. And a lot of that money is going to go into trust funds for you and your sister. For college and whatever you want to do with your lives. I want you both to understand something important. That money came from a terrible situation. It's not a prize. It's compensation for helping correct something wrong. We'll use it responsibly and gratefully. Emma nodded. I want to do something good with my share. Maybe help people who were hurt by medical fraud. That's a beautiful idea, Em. 6 months after the arrest, Patricia called from prison. She was allowed 1 phone call per week, and she used every single one to talk to the kids. The conversations were short at first, awkward. But gradually, they got easier. One evening, Emma handed me the phone after her call. Mom wants to talk to you. I took it hesitantly. Hello, Patricia. James. Her voice was different, smaller. Thank you for letting me talk to them. You didn't have to. They're your children. They need their mother, even if it's complicated. I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know. I lost myself. I got caught up in the money and the status and feeling important. Richard made me feel valued in a way I hadn't felt in years, and I made terrible choices. I know. The kids sound good. Happy, even. You're doing a good job with them. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. Try. She paused. There's something else. I've been going to counseling here, trying to understand how I became someone who could hurt people like that. And I realized I want to do something when I get out. Work with a nonprofit maybe, helping people navigate the healthcare system, advocate for patients. I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. That sounds like a good plan, Patricia. Will you bring the kids to visit, eventually? I looked at Emma and Michael, both watching me carefully. Yes, when we're all ready, we'll come visit. After we hung up, Michael asked, Is Mom going to be okay? I thought about how to answer that, about Patricia in a prison cell, facing years away from her children, about the patients she'd hurt and the trust she'd broken, about the long road ahead of her. I think so, Buddy. It's going to take a long time, but I think she's going to find her way back to being the person she was supposed to be. Dad? Emma said. Can I ask you something? Anything. Would you do it again? Everything you did? Even knowing how hard it would be? I looked at my daughter, at her serious face and old eyes. I thought about Mrs. Patterson and the other patients, about the 3 people who died from unnecessary surgeries, about the system that was supposed to heal people but had been corrupted by greed. Yes, I said, I would do it again, because some things matter more than being comfortable or avoiding hard conversations. The truth matters. Justice matters. And protecting people who can't protect themselves matters most of all. Emma nodded, and I saw something shift in her expression. Acceptance, maybe. Or understanding. I think I'm glad you did it too, she said quietly. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat on the back porch in the dark, still wearing the navy blue work shirt with environmental services stitched on the pocket. I'd been planning to throw it away, this symbol of 18 months of deception and investigation, but I couldn't quite bring myself to do it. This shirt had mopped floors and cleaned operating rooms. It had been laughed at in that courtroom by people who thought they knew what it meant. But it had also been armor, a disguise that let me see the truth others tried to hide. It had been my uniform while I did some of the most important work of my career. I thought about the judge's face when I'd shown my credentials. About Patricia being led away in handcuffs. About my children learning that their father wasn't who they thought he was, and neither was their mother. Some stories don't have clean endings. Some victories don't feel like winning. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything, and you have to trust that it was worth the price. I pulled out my phone and looked at the last message from my supervisor at OIG. Excellent work, Agent Thompson. You should be proud. Proud. I turned the word over in my mind. Was I proud? I destroyed my marriage, traumatized my children, and sent their mother to prison. But I'd also stopped a fraud scheme that was harming vulnerable patients. I'd recovered millions of dollars for taxpayers. I'd held people accountable for their actions. Maybe both things could be true at the same time. The porch light flickered on, and Emma stepped outside in her pajamas. Can't sleep? I asked. Not really. Too much to think about. She sat down next to me. Dad, I Googled the patients today, the ones Mom hurt. There were articles about some of them. Em, you didn't have to do that. I wanted to know. I needed to understand why it mattered so much. And I found Mrs. Patterson's story, about how she can't hold her granddaughter anymore, about how she trusted the doctors and they betrayed that trust. Emma's voice cracked. Mom did that. My mother did that to her. Yes, she did. I'm so angry at her, but I still love her. How is that possible? I pulled my daughter close. Because love isn't simple. People aren't simple. Your mother made terrible choices, but she's still your mother. She still loves you. She's still the woman who stayed up all night when you had pneumonia in 3rd grade. She's still the mom who taught you how to ride a bike. Bad choices don't erase good history. They just complicate it. Emma wiped her eyes. When we visit her in prison, can I tell her I'm angry? Yes, you should tell her exactly how you feel. All of it. Even if it hurts her? Sometimes the truth hurts. But it's still better than comfortable lies. That's the lesson in all of this, Em. The truth matters, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. We sat together in the darkness, father and daughter, both wearing the weight of choices neither of us made, but both of us had to live with. Above us, stars were coming out, bright and constant and true. I thought about justice and mercy, about love and accountability, about the long road ahead. And I thought about that $39 work shirt, and how sometimes the most important thing you can do is show up in whatever uniform you're wearing and do the job that needs to be done, even when everyone underestimates you. Especially then.